That was just a horrible basketball game all around to me. But it was the ending that made it one of the best basketball games. I mean, horrible basketball games that end the way you want them to kind of make for just the best basketball games. The Kings did everything in their power in the first half to make this game as difficult as possible for themselves. And then the Warriors kind of just did the exact same thing in the second half. I don't know what it is about these two teams, but I'm not just celebrating the Kings win. I'm not just celebrating the Kings moving on in the in-season tournament. I am celebrating the Kings not having to play the Warriors again for a while this season. This game can really just be summed up if you just watch the last 2 minutes, minute 30 seconds of this game, and it's just the Warriors making stupid decisions with the ball and ending with Malik Monk making a crazy circus shot that should just never go in, and it just goes in. For me, I was content with the Kings just losing by less than 12 points and moving on in the in-season tournament. I didn't care that much about the win, but of course, when it came down to it in the end, of course, I cared a lot about the win. It felt like the Kings had just stormed all the way back, took the lead late in that fourth quarter, and then were just kind of throwing it away with dumb plays. But then, like I said, the Warriors kind of just threw it right back, and that's the Warriors' biggest problem. It always has been. Just an incredible game all around. So let's start talking about it from the first half, where I just felt like the Kings just handed the Warriors a great start. There's something about the Kings playing the Warriors that just makes them make stupid decisions. There were just poor rotations, which obviously against the Warriors is going to lead to massive scrambling that leads to offensive rebounds for the Warriors. At one point, I think the rebounds were 8-1 to the Warriors. It was horrible. The Kings were not getting to the basket. They were taking bad 3-point shots. Sabonis wasn't taking shots that were open. The Kings couldn't even score on a 1v3 fast break. And honestly, that's something I've talked about this whole season is the Kings' inability to score in man advantage transition opportunities. And part of it was on Duarte, who should have gone to the corner. Part of it was on Fox, who should have just driven it to the basket. Just all around bad decision making. Then you had JaVale McGee coming in, which I don't know why we brought him in at all. I guess because we were rebounding poorly, but I thought we'd figured out that small ball against the Warriors is best. Trey at the 5 is best. And JaVale was just horrible. And that's not a matchup for him. But also his decision making was pretty poor. We fouled 2 3-point shooters, although one of them I don't think was actually a foul. And then at the end of the quarter, it was Trey Lyles not taking a pretty open layup, or, at least he was right under the rim, could have even made a pass, and instead, trying to run the clock down and then passed it to someone who I forget who, and then they passed it and turned it over. And the Warriors get the bucket at the end of the quarter. And it was just one of the dumbest quarters that we've seen the Kings play. And somehow they were only down 8. Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins decided to finally shoot the basketball well against us. I feel like everyone kind of saw that one coming. And then the Kings just couldn't make free throws. The only guy who it felt like was playing well offensively, Monk definitely came in and made an impact offensively, but then it was just Kevin Huerter. Everything good about the offense was going through Kevin Huerter in the first half. Him and Sabonis just had a great connection going. Even though Sabonis only scored 9 points, like I talked about him passing up the midi in the first quarter, but other than that, I thought he played pretty well. He doesn't need to score a lot to be impactful against the Warriors. It's just not a matchup where he's going to be scoring a lot. And I've accepted that. And yes, I want him to take the open middies, but he did a really good job distributing the ball and also taking Looney off the glass, especially in the second half. But him and Huerter had it going, and that's kind of what kept us in this game. but it just felt like it was just bad decision after bad decision. It was the Kings not getting to the rim, but then when they did get penetration and then kickouts, then Lyles, who had missed a couple threes in a row, passed up an open 3-point shot. Then Davion, who just came in and missed a three, then he passed up an open 3-point shot. So you're passing up the open 3-point shots to then take worse 3-point shots, contested 3-point shots pretty much. Draymond was making threes. Fox wasn't involved enough. Felt like no one on the Warriors could miss. We went down 24 at one point. Like everything was just going horribly. Harrison Barnes made some nice plays offensively, and it was him and Huerter in the second quarter, and that was about it. But of course, all I'm thinking is we just need to be within 11. Like when we were down 24, we're down 13 at this point, which is the weird thing about the in-season tournament. But that's kind of how I was thinking about it. That's probably not how the players were thinking about it, but as a fan, that's how I'm thinking about it. But the Kings finished the quarter pretty strong. They put Keon Ellis in for Davion, which I thought was smart because Davion just wasn't spacing the floor. And Keon did come in, hit a three, and I don't think he's a downgrade defensively from Davion at all. And so it was good to have him back. This was his first game back from that ankle injury. But then later on, Davion played the second half and Keon didn't. So that was interesting, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But the Kings finished the half strong by going to high pick and roll with Fox. And I would have liked to see them go to that a little more, and just especially earlier. And this is something that I always say is when the other team's going on runs, I just want the Kings to go high pick and roll because that's what they do at the end of games to get a bucket. And of course, moving the ball and playing the way that the Kings play is what makes them a good team. But I just think in those moments to stop big runs when the offense can't get anything, like you need to gain the momentum back. And I think you can do that by going to your best player, getting a screen from your other best player, and letting them work. And they kind of did that at the end of the second quarter, and it created an open Barnes three, and then Fox scored, and the Warriors were turning it over. And the Kings took advantage to cut it to, I think, 17 with that Huerter layup at the end of the first half. And so that was very much a salvaged first half for the Kings. But it was a huge way to end the second quarter. They needed that to be not down by 20 plus. And also it's interesting, like when you're down 17, but you only need to be at 11, right? It's like you're only down 6, which again, that's probably not how the players are thinking about it. But for me at halftime, it made me feel better because it's like, okay, we're only down 6 right now. That's fine. But the Kings came back out of halftime and we're just so much better defensively. They came out and immediately were pressing full court and forced an 8-second violation. And that was just the start to a much better defensive half. And it started on the boards as well. Just the rebounding was so much better. But the third quarter was just a horrible quarter. And we won it by 8, 40-32. But it was just everyone fouling the entire time. And the Kings couldn't make their free throws. They went 27 for 42 from the free throw line in this game. The Warriors shot 12 less free throws and made only 1 less free throw. So I was going to be very pissed if that was the difference in this game because the Kings were doing a really good job in that third quarter of getting to the line. But on the other end, the Warriors were as well, but the Kings were doing a better job. Trey Lyles was playing super well. He was getting to the free throw line, and he didn't have the best shooting game, but he was doing a great job of attacking closeouts like he always does. But the Kings they just couldn't really make that sustained run. It always felt like they were right there, ready to make the run, and they just could never quite make the big run to cut it to single digits. Like I said, the Kings went back to Davion at the backup point guard, or just guard because you have Malik for the second half. And I didn't totally understand it. He just doesn't spread the floor and space the floor as much as I would want from a backup guard. And I think Keon just does that better. But to his credit, he did get to the free throw line and actually made both free throws, which let's, clap it up for him. Someone who actually made both free throws. And then he also had another good drive to the basket. So we got to definitely credit him for that. That being said, I still want Keon over him. It's funny, in a game where the Kings shot horribly from the free throw line, Sabonis actually went 5 for 6, and it was Fox who went 9 for 17. Just usually, if you told me the Kings shot 64% from the free throw line, I'd be like, oh yeah, Sabonis probably missed, at least 5. And like I said earlier, with where it felt like the Kings were just so close to going on a run, but they just could not sustain it, then they got really close, and then Barnes got that rebound and then just threw it straight to Gary Payton, who then got the and one against him. And that was killer, because it felt like the Kings were going on a run. They were about to cut it to single digits, and then you just throw it away. And that was just kind of the sloppiness that it felt like this game was played with. The Kings didn't have a lot of turnovers. They only had 10, but that doesn't mean that it didn't feel like the Kings were playing sloppy basketball. But the Kings were able to barely get it within single digits by the end of the third quarter. And I think it was just very much a grind it out kind of third quarter. Just get to the free throw line. It was not pretty at all. Somehow you score 40 points. It was probably the longest quarter this season. But I saw a stat that said that this was the game with the most fouls committed without a player fouling out. And there weren't really a lot of players close. Like Huerter by the end had 5, Fox had 4. We had Curry and Wiggins with 5 by the end, and Looney and Draymond with 4. But it never really felt like too big of a concern for either side. So just a very odd statistic and a very odd game. The Kings went away from JaVale McGee in the second half, which definitely the right play. They went to Trey Lyles at the 5 and Sasha Vezenkov. And Sasha came in and played really well. He came in, hit a couple threes, then missed a lot towards the end, which wasn't great. But he got 2 blocks, which was wild. He got a really nice assist, was rebounding the ball, was a team high plus 17, also a game high plus 17, was just making things happen. It was weird when he got called for that block and flop, and then it seemed like they were going to count the basket, and then no, they're not counting the basket. Actually, it's not a flop, which, like, how can it be a block and a flop at the same time kind of thing? There were some odd moments like that. Reviews were a big part of this game. Like, challenges were a big part. Mike Brown kind of wasted his challenge pretty early, and then the Warriors also, I think they got a challenge correct at one point, and then Steve Kerr with that big challenge when Steph kicked out very clearly, lost his final timeout, and that made a huge impact at the end of this game. Steve Kerr had a horrible end of this game, coaching-wise, with that challenge call, so they didn't have a timeout, and then taking out Moses Moody. It was wild that it was a Sasha Vezenkov versus Moses Moody duel at one point, just going back and forth with 3-pointers. But I think where the momentum really shifted was when Draymond just started going crazy. There was that one play where he totally flopped and was holding his face on the ground when he didn't even get hit in the face by Lyles. And to the referee's credit, they didn't call a foul on Lyles, but they also didn't call a flop. But Draymond was going crazy, and he ended up picking up that technical, and Stan Van Gundy on the call was like, he shouldn't get a technical for that, after he had been yelling at the ref, all game, but like for 5 minutes straight. Like, yeah, of course he deserved that tech, but it wasn't necessarily the tech that I feel like turned the game. It was then when Draymond came out and still hadn't calmed down and just went out there and hacked Malik Monk for no reason. And that's when I felt like the game shifted, and I was getting up and I was clapping. I was like, yeah, we're in his head now. The Kings were going with a unit of De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Sasha Vezenkov, Trey Lyles, and Domantas Sabonis for a lot of the fourth quarter. And it was good for a bit, but then the ball just totally stopped moving. Malik Monk was trying to make things happen by himself, and it just was not working at all. And it was very much a Malik Monk chaos fourth quarter, where he's making some horrible plays, but then at the end he won us the game, and it was just wild. But I was just asking, where is Kevin Huerter? I guess I didn't realize at that point he was in foul trouble, so it makes sense why he wasn't in the game until like the 3 minute mark. But it felt like everything good offensively was because of Kevin Huerter. Also, his rebounding was really good, but 21 points, 5 assists, 9 rebounds, shooting super efficiently. We got that lead, but then just couldn't really score. Couldn't get anything going offensively. We were chucking up horrible threes, just guys kind of trying to get straight to the rim, but weren't moving the ball, so weren't having much success, and we're turning the ball over. And it really felt like we had come all the way back and then just lost steam at the end. And you see that a lot where teams just exert all of their energy and then lose it right at the end. And I was just like, not another game against the Warriors where we lose it at the end and get sloppy. But then the Warriors took Moses Moody out, who was 3 for 3 from 3, 4 for 4 from the field, and it got a lot better. A big adjustment that the Kings made was just blitzing Steph Curry every single time, and it was working pretty well. There were definitely some bad open corner threes that they gave up where like it was just 2 passes and they were wide open. Like the rotations were not there at all. But that's kind of what you have to give up to be able to take the ball out of Steph Curry's hands. And it was working. The Warriors were just not scoring at the same rate that they were previously in the game. They only had 19 points in the fourth quarter to the Kings 29. And then it was that Fox 3 that came off really good ball movement to be able to kind of restart the run to get back in the game. And there were a lot of possessions for the Kings where they were getting offensive rebounds, like multiple of them, and they couldn't score still. But then finally they were able to move the ball around, get an open Fox 3. Then it was a Warriors turnover. I think Steph turned it over. He had some bad ones. That led to another possession of great ball movement, Malik Monk 3. Then we had the Kings pressing up again. Draymond Green turns it over. And it felt like, I can't remember which game in the playoffs, but one of those games in the playoffs where the Warriors were so close to throwing the game away. And it was the one where Steph Curry was called the timeout when they didn't have any and they were just throwing the ball away. But Malik Monk just making big plays with that steal, a 3 ball, and then Draymond turned it over. And that's when we got the insane Malik Monk circus shot where he just threw it up and didn't call bank, but that's okay because we'll give it to him. And then, like I said, the Warriors without a timeout because they made a horrible challenge call, and that kind of really hurt their chances to get an open shot. The Kings again did a really good job of just focusing their attention on Curry. I was pretty nervous because they were only down 1. So yeah, even if we blitz Curry, they can maybe get to the rim. But I think the refs probably would have swallowed their whistle like they did on the Monk play. But then they were able to disrupt Curry enough. He lost the ball and missed the shot. Just a crazy game. But one where the Kings were able to prey on the Warriors' biggest weakness, which is turning the ball over. And the Kings had 26 points off of 20 Warrior turnovers. The Warriors shot better from 3. They shot better from the free throw line. They shot better from the field. But the Kings were able to just get more possessions. They got 8 more shots from the field in this game. And like I said, a lot more free throws. And that was just through forcing, or maybe not even forcing, but still getting turnovers from the Warriors and getting on the offensive glass and winning that battle after starting off horribly. Chris Paul went out pretty early in this game with an injury, but Corey Joseph was pretty good off the bench. When he made that like hook shot, I was like, we're done. Corey Joseph revenge game. Dario Saric was, knocking down his threes. Gary Payton was playing well until he went out with injury. Andrew Wiggins was killing us in that first half. Clay was hitting shots in the first half, but we were able to slow them down in the second half. Chris Duarte got the start again for the injured Keegan Murray. It seems like Keegan, he got upgraded to doubtful for this game. He practiced, and so maybe he'll be back for the next game, or if not that, then he'll probably be back for the one after that, if I were to guess. It seems like it's just a pain tolerance thing, but the injury doesn't seem too concerning, which is good because I was worried about it being a back injury. But talking about Chris Duarte in this game, definitely had a rough foul on a 3-point shooter on one, but I mean, he's just such a confusing player to me. I definitely understand why he gets the start because he plays physical defense. He's going to press full court, give you all the effort. He made some nice cuts to the basket, but then he also just fouls too much. He can't guard Steph. Steph is too crafty for him. Like, not a lot of people can guard Steph, but I just think Duarte is especially bad because of the craftiness and Duarte being foul prone. Kessler Edwards only played 5 minutes in this game. I didn't really notice him being bad at all. I thought his defense was okay, and he missed his 1 3-point shot, but I guess Mike Brown didn't like what he saw, or maybe he just would rather play other guys more minutes, and he wanted to go small in the second half, which made sense. And so it was Sasha out there at the 4 for size, and then he was just playing his best players more. So I think that's probably more what it is with Kessler, whereas for McGee, it was like McGee was just playing horribly, and it was a matchup problem. It was a gutsy win for the Kings, with Fox not shooting super well, with Monk not being able to create much inside. Like, he was scoring for himself, but he was having trouble getting any passes to get to his bigs in the pick and roll. Like, Trey Lyles didn't shoot well, although he made a positive impact. Sasha came in and made some shots, but overall shot inefficiently. There weren't that many guys that were shooting well for the Kings, and they only shot 34% from 3. And usually the Kings lose when they shoot under 35-36% from 3, but they were able to pull this one out. I know people will go at Domas for only having 9 points and 8 rebounds, and of course I want him to shoot more, but he did make that one really nice turnaround, and there was really only one shot that I was mad at him for passing up, and it was, the medium range midi. I don't need him taking the super long range middies, especially when it's early in the shot clock. He has Kevin Huerter coming around the screen. I thought he was playing really well distributing the ball. Fox's playmaking was really good as well. But it was nice to see Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes being able to actually shoot the ball and score against the Warriors, because that's just something they haven't been able to do against the Warriors at all. This game would have been way more stressful. It was already super stressful at the end, but by the end, we had clinched our IST quarterfinal berth, right? The Warriors weren't going to win this game by more than 11 at a certain point in the fourth. But if OKC had beat Minnesota, which that was a very close game, if they would have beat Minnesota, then we would have needed to win this game to advance, and it would have been a lot more stressful. I think when talking about the in-season tournament, I mean, on the TNT, like on the post-game show, they had some horrible ideas. Charles Barkley just doesn't understand it, and Candace Parker was talking about how regular season records should matter, which is just a horrible idea because it would screw over the Kings. I mean, not even necessarily in this scenario. I mean, it would, because the Timberwolves would be over the Kings, but the Kings would have a better record than the Warriors. But that being a tiebreaker just doesn't make sense because the Kings have played a bunch of road games and had an imbalanced schedule. I think point differential makes the most sense at this point, but people were always going to be mad when it's a round robin format, because round robin format always leads to tiebreakers no matter what you do. In this case, the Kings were able to get through without a tiebreaker, but I think there will be tweaks to the in-season tournament for sure. I think the format overall could change to be more of like a double elimination bracket as opposed to a round robin. And so then there wouldn't be tiebreakers. It would just be head to head battles. And I think that probably makes more sense. But it's tough to do with an odd number of teams in each conference. But once expansion happens, which is coming pretty soon, it'll be easier when there's 16 teams in each conference. But they could give buys to teams with the best regular season record in the previous season. But overall, the in-season tournament has been a resounding success. I mean, look at this game. Like, of course it would have been exciting anyways, but the league knew exactly what they were doing coming into in terms of scheduling this game, making it the last game of the in-season tournament, putting it on TNT. No other games are on. Obviously, the rematch, and it generated a lot of excitement. For me, it did feel like a playoff game, and maybe that's just because we just played the Warriors in the playoffs, so it's kind of familiar. But the in-season tournament has definitely been a success so far. Now the Pelicans move on to play the Pelicans. I talked about this after the last game, how the Kings have to play the Warriors, who they were 0-2 against. And if they move on, then they either play the Pelicans, who they're 0-2 against, or the Rockets, who they're 0-2 against. The only teams they've lost to are the teams they're going to be playing. So the Rockets lost, Pelicans move on. Because the Kings won this game and didn't advance with a loss, that means they get to host the quarterfinal, which is very nice because we just lost 2 games in New Orleans and we've been better at home, 5-1 home record. But that game will be next Monday. And then if we win that, then we move on to Vegas and we'll play the winner of Lakers Suns. But I believe there are 2 more games before that Pelicans game. Yeah, 2 more games before the Pelicans game. And one of them is tomorrow. So we have a back-to-back against the Clippers. And I mean, it doesn't feel like we're going to win that game at all. I mean, just because you're coming off an emotional game. And so a lot of times it can be a letdown if you play the next night. But we just saw the Clippers just absolutely get embarrassed by the Denver Nuggets, who were on the second night of a back-to-back without Jokic, Murray, and Aaron Gordon. It was Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan going crazy against their former teams, the old guys, and the Clippers have looked horrible with James Harden. There is no ball movement. Somehow, I'm still seeing Russell Westbrook get blamed for stuff, which is insane. The guy coming off the bench who's actually by far the lowest paid of all of them, the least expectations, and he played efficiently in their last game. But the James Harden move has not worked out so far for the Clippers, and it's worked out great for the Sixers. But I think that just kind of shows you, the type of player James Harden is. He's super ball dominant. And when he was at his peak, that was great because he could be a one-man offense. But he's not that guy anymore. And so if you revolve your entire offense around him, it just slows everything down, hurts everyone else, but he can't carry the same offensive load that he could. So far it's looked like a very bad trade, but they still have a bunch of really talented players. Maybe it'll be a good matchup for the Kings because even if they're tired, they don't necessarily have to rotate a lot because the ball ain't exactly moving for the Clippers. It's going to be a tough matchup, though, if we don't have Keegan Murray because we have to have size defending both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George plus a defender on James Harden. So it's probably Fox, I would guess, on Harden, Duarte on Paul George, and Harrison Barnes on Kawhi Leonard. But definitely a game that I feel like we can still win even though we are on the second night of a back-to-back. Anyways, that is it for this episode of The Real Report. Very happy. A lot of things to celebrate. Finally beating the Warriors, moving to 10-6 on the season, moving on in the in-season tournament, and getting to host the quarterfinal game, which is awesome. So I will see you guys to recap that game tomorrow night against the Clippers. Peace.